In the world of mages, ordinary people are always seen as those without the talent to use magic. Meanwhile, effort is considered only a necessary condition to serve magic, and if a person is not blessed with bloodline or innate ability, they will never be able to use magic properly. Our main character is Reed. He was born as a commoner. At this moment, Reed was burned by the flames of a noble while being mocked by everyone around him. Surrounded by scorching fire, Reed only wished that he could learn more about magic. Unexpectedly, the gods heard Reed's prayer, and he was reincarnated into the body of the seventh prince, Lloyd Saloom. Right after his birth, when Lloyd opened his eyes, he saw giants surrounding him, who were actually maids in the palace. Thinking he was in danger, he immediately cast a fireball to defend himself. No one expected the spell to be so powerful that it completely destroyed the room. As if his magical power had already reached its absolute limit, news of the birth of the seventh Prince Lloyd spread rapidly throughout the capital of Saloom, causing widespread excitement and discussion among the people. Many years later, Lloyd grew into a boy who loved sneaking away from the maids to find a quiet corner and read magic books. During one of his escapes, he accidentally ran into other nobles within the palace. They only laughed and ignored him, believing that Lloyd, who stood seventh in the line of succession, had almost no chance of inheriting the throne. Even so, since the moment he was cradled as a baby, Lloyd had already mastered language, read magic books instead of picture books, and even hated breast milk, proof of his unusually gentlemanly nature. Moreover, the fact that he unleashed a destructive spell the moment he was born led people to rumor that he might be the reincarnation of William Beldle himself. Lloyd did not understand why he was reincarnated, nor why he became someone as significant as the seventh prince. However, he still retained the same desire he had as Reed, to endlessly learn and explore magic. With the royal palace filled with countless magic books, he was determined to read every single one of them. One day, just as Lloyd reached out to grab a book from the shelf, Silpha appeared, a maid who also served as his swordsmanship instructor, to take him to training. Even though it had nothing to do with succession, Lloyd was still required to learn swordsmanship. 3 years passed, and teaching Lloyd became Silpha's purpose in life. However, Lloyd had no interest in swordsmanship because his only passion was magic. Wanting to end the training quickly, Lloyd tried using control magic to track Silpha's movements. With that skill, he created the illusion that Silpha was fighting herself. However, the overwhelming gap in physical strength, power, and height caused Lloyd to lose once again. Today, Lloyd decided to try a different method to compensate for the difference. He used life enhancement magic to extend his body and increase his strength, combined with spatial magic to levitate himself and gain height. Once the gap was closed, Lloyd immediately counterattacked and launched a surprise strike. However, Silpha still saw through his move and Lloyd was defeated again. When Silpha inspected the sword, she discovered that Lloyd had used magic to enhance his strength. Even so, she was not angry but instead delighted by how adorable and talented he was. Especially his ability to activate 2 spells at the same time, something even royal court mages struggled to accomplish. Fortunately, Lloyd had hidden the fact that he actually used 4 spells. Otherwise, the entire kingdom would surely fall into chaos. In the evening, the maids gathered around Lloyd to bathe him. The boy only wanted to quickly go explore new magic, but they threatened that if he misbehaved, the Forbidden Book demon would take him away. According to legend, long ago, a demon named Grimoire nearly drove the kingdom to destruction. The mages had to sacrifice countless lives to seal him inside a book. After hearing this, Lloyd became even more excited because he knew something extremely interesting lay beneath the castle basement. When night fell, he secretly used wind magic to manipulate airflow and light reflection to prevent the guards from seeing him. In the basement, Lloyd approached a door reinforced with the strongest barrier created by 10 mages. Yet with only a small amount of mana, he broke through it without making a single sound. Despite living in the castle for 10 years, Lloyd had never known that such a massive magic library existed here. Just as he was about to recreate the barrier for further study, a monster suddenly emerged from a book and said, "Thank you, Lloyd, thanks to you breaking the barrier, I can finally escape." The legendary monster Grimoire thought to himself how fortunate it was that the one who broke the seal was merely a child. He immediately tempted Lloyd to completely kaijo the seal, promising to grant him as much gold as he desired in return. However, such cheap tricks could not deceive Lloyd. With just a glance, he realized that Grimoire's body was merely a stone construct transformed by magic. Moreover, the low purity of its core made the demon's power extremely weak. Lloyd calmly declared that he would reseal him, because he could not allow a demon capable of threatening the entire nation to escape. Furthermore, this was the place where Lloyd researched magic, so he absolutely could not allow the demon to roam free here. Hearing this, Grimoire hurriedly explained that he had been sealed away for hundreds of years, and no longer harbored any ill will toward humans. He promised that if Lloyd broke the seal, he would teach him ancient techniques that had long been lost to time. Upon hearing the words, lost magic, Lloyd's eyes lit up with excitement. In the end, he agreed. Lloyd formed a key out of pure mana and lightly flicked it, causing it to pierce straight into the book that sealed Grimoire. The barrier shattered, and the monster burst into delighted laughter upon gaining freedom. Lloyd eagerly demanded that Grimoire teach him magic immediately. However, Grimoire instantly went back on his word. He fired a powerful dark flash cannon straight at Lloyd. The attack looked incredibly destructive, yet Lloyd was completely unharmed. He was even thrilled after realizing how unique the spell structure was. Enraged, Grimoire continuously fired more dark flash cannons, but Lloyd remained standing as if nothing was happening. To further test it, Lloyd extended his finger and directly took the attack. The dark flash cannon shattered his finger to pieces, but Lloyd immediately analyzed the spell's mechanism, then used recovery magic to regenerate his finger. Grimoire grew even more furious, sprouting an additional head to chant dual incantations. The two streams of mana combined into a devastating attack, but even after merging two spells, he still could not pierce Lloyd's barrier. Lloyd analyzed that normally a person could not cast two spells at once, but Grimoire could do so because he had two heads. The monster stood there helpless, never expecting that even his strongest attack would fail to leave a single scratch on Lloyd. Feeling that attack practice was enough, Lloyd wanted to learn more defensive magic by counter-attacking Grimoire. Before launching his spell, he erected a barrier that enveloped the entire area. Lloyd created a blazing inferno fireball and fired it straight at Grimoire. The flames engulfed the entire barrier, causing the demon to tremble violently, no longer daring to resist. After that, Lloyd used recovery magic to restore the room to its original state, which terrified Grimoire even more. Realizing he had encountered a being even more frightening than a demon, Grimoire bowed his head and addressed Lloyd as Master. This was the first time he had ever seen a mage so terrifying. Even though he was a demon and could not die from ordinary magic, he still trembled at the thought of what would happen if Lloyd went all out. In the end, Grimoire swore to become Lloyd's familiar spirit. However, Lloyd told him to shrink his form to avoid being discovered. Grimoire immediately began scheming. If he turned into something cute, he could lower Lloyd's guard and look for a chance to assassinate him. Lloyd then ordered Grimoire to hide inside his body to remain concealed. Grimoire was overjoyed, thinking he finally had a chance to get close and seize control of Lloyd's body. But the moment he touched Lloyd, he immediately began trembling in terror. As Lloyd's mana was overwhelmingly powerful, he no longer knew who the real monster was anymore. In the end, he reintroduced himself to Lloyd under the name Grim, his voice shaking as if he were about to cry. One day, while Lloyd was happily immersed in magic books, Albert, his older brother, came to visit. The two brothers later headed to the training ground to practice spellcasting. As expected, as the second prince, Albert hit the target with every single shot. Skilled in both martial and magical arts, everyone believed he would be the future successor. When it was Lloyd's turn to demonstrate, he deliberately missed his shots to avoid drawing attention. Lloyd's crooked fireball pierced through the target and flew off course, causing the butler to mutter that he shot like a farm chicken. Albert seemed to realize something, then quietly left and allowed Lloyd to continue training alone. When no one was watching anymore, Lloyd immediately tested Grim's dual chanting skill. Grim turned pale when he saw Lloyd raise his hand and invite him to merge and combine their mana. Normally Grim would almost pass out after chanting 2 or 3 spells, yet Lloyd chanted nearly 100 spells at the same time. This caused Grim to get a nosebleed from overload. Lloyd also discovered that he could speak through the mouth of Grim growing on his hand. So he went all out and combined both mouths to cast high-level magic. Grim froze in sheer terror. This time, Lloyd unleashed a fire explosion so powerful that even people inside the castle saw the blazing light fill the sky. Albert watched from afar. He became even more convinced that Lloyd was deliberately hiding his true strength, and that he could become a genius sage in the future. Meanwhile, Grim was silently chanting prayers in his heart, unsure whether this brat was human or some kind of monster. Fortunately, Lloyd restored the sky in time using space-time magic. Otherwise, he would have been punished badly enough to lose his meals for a whole month. The next day, news about Lloyd accidentally blowing away the sky appeared in secret reports. Lloyd did not care, because he was now only interested in exploring dungeons. Grimm felt that he had gone from a legendary demon to nothing more than a nanny, spending all day looking after his young master. To sneak out of the palace, Lloyd took an acorn and used magic to create a living puppet. Its bones and skin were made of tree resin. With simulated nerve fibers, it could act just like a real human. But Silpha was so sharp-eyed that with a single glance she noticed Lloyd had grown by 0.7 millimeters, so the puppet could not fool her. The final solution, Lloyd asked Grimm to disguise himself and act as a double so he could escape the castle. Grimm's soul fully entered the wooden puppet Lloyd created, while his real body separated and shrank down, crawling into Lloyd's palm as a tiny creature. To be fair, this new form of Grimm was compact, and it also allowed mana to flow more smoothly. When Lloyd left the castle, Grimm stayed behind in the room and began plotting something dark. However, Lloyd thanked him for helping cover everything up. This made Grimm feel slightly moved. Truly moved. Not the kind of moved and then casually betraying his master. Lloyd flew around aimlessly but still had no idea where the dungeon was. At that moment, he saw a girl in a pink dress fighting a group of monsters led by Latos. He realized she was using a type of energy he had read about in foreign books. Chi, a form of energy that circulates through the body via breathing techniques, allowing one to unleash power beyond human limits. After turning the monsters into pulp, the girl immediately noticed where Lloyd was hiding. Lloyd was about to step out and greet her, but Grimm shouted in his mind, "Don't. If your identity as the 7th prince is exposed, you're finished," before he could do anything. The girl leapt straight up onto the cliff where Lloyd was standing. Lloyd was forced to transform using limited identity illusion magic, a spell that could only rely on familiar images. He combined his own face with that of the second Prince Albert, and used the fake name Robert. The girl in front of him was Dao, a B-rank adventurer, and also a martial artist who used Chi. The moment she saw a handsome guy, Dao froze on the spot. She thought to herself, after 18 years of martial training just to find a boyfriend, my time has finally come. Because her muscles were overly developed, men usually avoided her, preferring weaker monk-type men instead. Therefore, Dao immediately began plotting to drag handsome Robert home as her boyfriend. Dao invited Lloyd to conquer the dungeon together. He did not expect her to be so enthusiastic, because she had no teammates. Dao usually explored alone, so she was delighted to meet someone knowledgeable about Chi. Dao began explaining Chi techniques. Chi is absorbed, circulated, and then detonated in a cycle, creating power beyond limits. Lloyd tried to imitate her but kept gasping for breath. This made Dao panic, thinking his lungs might be injured. While she was worrying, Lloyd became even more excited, because he felt a different kind of energy flowing through his body. An energy distinct from mana, one that could be converted into magic. Dao decided to teach Lloyd Chi techniques, all the way until they left the dungeon. She even taught him a few close combat techniques using aura. A single move was enough to instantly take down the dungeon boss. The treasure chest opened, but at this dungeon's level, there was probably nothing valuable inside. Dao was surprised that Lloyd had mastered aura control in such a short time. She began to daydream, if I train him well, and add a bit of master-disciple romance, even the old man back home would have to nod and accept him as my fiancé. But at the exact moment the chest was opened, a magical scythe shot out and nearly sliced Dao in half. Luckily, Lloyd yanked her hard to the side. Immediately after that, a skull-faced monster, a lich, appeared and stared straight at the two of them. Dao realized it was just small fry and reassured Lloyd. She told him to leave the cave and let her fight alone. But before Lloyd could even protest, Dao struck him with a palm and sent him flying out. While being flung away, Lloyd still lamented, "Oh man, I don't get to watch an epic fight anymore," even though the blow was extremely powerful. Lloyd's barrier was hundreds of times stronger, so he was completely unharmed. The demons inside the cave were still watching for fun when suddenly, they were blown apart on the spot by the mana shock from the impact. Lloyd tried calling Grimm but got no response. After a while, Grimm weakly transmitted a thought, help me. Lady Silpha is hitting too hard." Then the signal cut off completely. Inside the cave, the battle descended into chaos. Dao was gradually exhausted, beaten badly from all sides. She knew for certain she couldn't defeat the lich. But fortunately, Lloyd had already escaped outside. Dao prepared to run, complaining as she fled. Dying because of a guy is the most beautiful way to die. Suddenly, the lich spoke, making Dao jump in shock. He said he recognized the aura art, an exotic technique he had seen before. He had absorbed the souls and memories of countless adventurers, so Dao's techniques were not even worth eating. What truly caught his attention was the boy she had blasted outside, Lloyd. He said, "That child reacted in time to my attack. He is not an ordinary human." Lloyd blended two different powers together. He dodged the Lich's attacks while unleashing his bizarre yet dignified aura art. Every move he launched was sharp like a blade, slicing apart each of his opponent's strikes. The Lich never imagined such a powerful aura art could exist. He also couldn't understand why the one before him was a mage, yet wielded auras stronger than any martial artist. After discovering this new trick, Lloyd seemed to turn into a completely different person. Even though the Lich had erected a defensive barrier, he was still cut in half in the blink of an eye. The battle ended unbelievably fast. Despite the clash being intense enough to throw sparks everywhere, Lloyd ultimately obtained only a dull knife, but it seemed to contain a special kind of magical power within. At that moment, the ground shook and the treasure chest began sinking into the earth. This was a familiar phenomenon. After the treasure is taken, the dungeon disappears. The chest was actually the core of the dungeon. It constantly moves underground to collect magic tools, gradually developing into a dungeon. It absorbs the energy of adventurers who come to conquer it and grows stronger over time. If defeated, the dungeon core releases all its items and flees. After Lloyd left the dungeon, the entrance was immediately sealed shut. The dungeon core once again slipped underground, accumulating energy while waiting for the day it would resurface. Only then did Lloyd remember that his underling Grim was about to dry up and die back at home. Thinking back on the ultimate move Lloyd had just used, even Lloyd himself felt he had gone way too far, since under normal circumstances he might not even be able to perform it. Grim once said she wanted to become strong enough for Lloyd to look back at her, but Lloyd had already dashed off, leaving no way to contact him. When Lloyd returned home, Grim was sprawled flat on the floor, covered in injuries all over her body. Grim felt so wrong she was on the verge of tears, clearly a demon. Yet always the one getting bullied. Lloyd didn't know what else to say and could only comfort his friend. Grim still couldn't believe that Lloyd had left her at home for so long just because of a dull knife. Lloyd dipped the knife into hot water and began sharpening it. Sure enough, he obtained a fragment of magical marrow fluid engraved inside the blade. This was a catalyst for enchantment, allowing runes to be carved onto weapons to enhance their power. For example, this knife could be imbued with a strength-boosting spell. This time, Lloyd obtained a vial of magical marrow fluid, a material that was extremely rare and difficult to produce. If he failed during the enchanting process, both the liquid and the weapon would vanish into nothingness. Therefore, Lloyd decided to analyze and refine it himself from scratch. At first, this was only a simple purification spell, but if the purity was increased, it would naturally separate into different components. The materials needed to create marrow fluid were silver oil and red magic powder, a powder ground from the core of a dungeon. Lloyd could make use of the treasure chest he had just obtained. As for silver oil, Lloyd had to ask his royal father for it. Hearing that his son was asking for silver instead of gold, the king thought Lloyd was being thrifty for the family and immediately agreed. Truly my son. In addition, Lloyd also had to settle things with his fists against his sister Sin to get more oil. Even though he cheated throughout the entire match, Lloyd still couldn't beat her. Fortunately, Silpha, who was a huge fan of the Seventh Prince, happily gifted him a bottle of oil. She was overjoyed to see that Lloyd had returned to peak form. No longer as pathetic as last time, Grim trembled from head to toe but didn't dare say a word in front of this monster maid. Sensing that the situation was becoming dangerous, Lloyd immediately withdrew. He and Grim slipped into their secret base to begin brewing the potion. Lloyd also went to borrow weapons from his older brother Albert, as expected of a prince. With just one sentence, the royal guards brought out a whole pile of weapons. Even so, their hearts ached because no one truly believed a 10-year-old could perform such difficult enchantments. Lloyd got straight to work, but ordinary steel couldn't withstand the amount of magical power he poured into it and kept shattering. Encouraged enthusiastically by Grim, after countless failures, Lloyd finally succeeded in forging his first sword. Out of 120 weapons, Lloyd succeeded with only 50, but that alone was enough to shock Albert. Even the best enchanters only had a success rate of around 10%. So Lloyd's talent far exceeded all expectations. The soldiers were skeptical, but with just a light touch on the sword sheath, they immediately broke it because the blade was absurdly sharp and powerful. Even Albert's own sword was successfully enhanced by Lloyd. Lloyd wanted to see the true power in real combat. So Albert mentioned the upcoming monster hunting trip with their royal father, a perfect opportunity to test this hot batch. The next morning, the second prince and Lloyd set out together to hunt monsters. Along the way, Lloyd used the aura technique he had learned the previous day and easily detected a group of monsters lying in ambush. The soldiers, along with Shaw, immediately charged into battle. The weapons enchanted by Lloyd easily sliced through iron and steel, so those weak monsters were nothing at all. As for Silpha, she used only an ordinary sword yet still wiped out dozens of monsters, truly terrifying. Suddenly, the martial artist Dao also appeared, her face burning with fighting spirit. Wherever there were handsome men, there she was, so Dao immediately jumped in to help. Lloyd went pale when he saw her, afraid his identity would be exposed. Dao had already sensed someone using aura nearby but couldn't find Robert, and Lloyd's face looked very similar to that handsome guy from before. When Silpha saw Dao trying to flirt with the seventh prince, she immediately rushed over to warn her off. Luckily, Albert intervened in time, or the two of them would have started fighting right on the battlefield. That night, the group set up camp by a lakeside. Dao shamelessly continued sticking close to her, Crush. When Lloyd crawled into his tent, he was startled to see Silpha changing clothes inside his tent. She claimed the duty of protecting the seventh prince and had simply taken over the tent. Lloyd tried to find another place to sleep, but Silpha locked him in a chokehold, explaining that outside there was that woman, who was even more dangerous than monsters. Dao accidentally witnessed this scene and mistook Silpha for a diligent maid, so she immediately rushed in to pick a fight. The two of them argued so fiercely that the soldiers gathered around as if watching a play, only to be beaten down and left sprawled all over the ground by the two women. At that point, Dao finally explained that she was only on a mission to repair a nearby temple, and had no intention of following Lloyd around. Suddenly, a gigantic wolf appeared. It turned out to be the ferocious bear-wolf species that had been wreaking havoc across the region. Albert wanted to test the sword Lloyd had enhanced, so he immediately charged forward and unleashed the blazing fireball. Thanks to the power of the enchantment, the attack incinerated the wolf in a single strike. However, only Grimm noticed that the nearby temple was actually a seal imprisoning an evil demon. Not long after, the demon named Pazu poked his head out from the mouth of the slain wolf, using his power to resurrect the bear wolf and command the entire pack to attack. The wolves possessed insane regenerative abilities, so no matter how fiercely everyone fought, they couldn't bring them down. Amid the chaos, Lloyd instead sat down to take notes and study Pazu's control-type magic, leaving Silpha to stand in front and protect him. Seeing how calm Lloyd was, Pazu began to provoke him. Silpha couldn't tolerate it, and immediately drew her sword, severing all four legs of the bear wolf he was controlling. Because Pazu was focused on restoring his host, the other wolves froze in place, and their regeneration speed slowed significantly. The second prince and Dao immediately charged into attack. Silpha was overly proud of the sword enchanted by Lloyd and let her guard down slightly. Seizing the opportunity, Pazu lunged from behind and bit her, swallowing her whole. But instantly, from inside the wolf's stomach, Silpha unleashed her ultimate move. Twin dragons ascend to the heavens, ripping its body apart from within. This was followed by the diving phoenix strike, severing the bear wolf's head. With no path left to escape, Pazu was knocked down, but he still refused to give up, releasing a stream of poisonous gas that paralyzed everyone. Silpha was hit head-on, blown away into the lake, and gravely injured. Dao rushed in just in time to save her, helping Silpha evade the finishing blow. Lloyd was the only one unaffected by the poison gas, as he used aura techniques to resist toxins. Even so, Dao wasn't strong enough to oppose Pazu and was quickly captured. But this boy-crazy girl refused to give up. There were still plenty of handsome men outside waiting for her to collect. Dao unleashed her thunder suppression break, blasting Pazu into the lake. But immediately after, she was swallowed whole by another bear wolf. Pazu intended to turn Silpha into his subordinate, but he was terrified when he saw Lloyd still standing calmly within the poison gas as if nothing was wrong. Beside Lloyd stood Grimm, another demon, looking at him with a face that said, "I don't even know what to do with you." Hearing Pazu insult him, Grimm's face flushed red with anger. At first, Grimm planned to persuade him to surrender out of demonic solidarity. But after being cursed at, he changed his mind. "Forget it. I'll just let you die." The wolves charged at Lloyd once again, but in a short amount of time, Lloyd had already learned how to alter the nature of magical power, freeing the entire bear wolf pack from Pazu's control. The bear wolf that had swallowed Dao spat her out as well, allowing her to survive. Once they regained awareness, the wolves immediately recognized Pazu as the true enemy and rushed to take revenge. But Pazu's power was overwhelming, subduing all 7 wolves with ease. Lloyd knew that demons couldn't be killed by ordinary magic, so he was extremely eager to unleash his full strength. His mana erupted and engulfed the entire area, terrifying Pazu nearly to death. Grimm had warned him earlier, but he refused to listen. Now there was no saving him. Pazu turned and fled desperately, but the 7th prince's casting speed was absurdly monstrous. Pazu was immediately trapped by Lloyd inside a spatial magic barrier. Even though Pazu begged for mercy, Lloyd still decided to use him as a test subject to experiment with a spell containing all 4 attributes. The spell was cast continuously 100 times per minute for 30 minutes. No one expected that after just 5 minutes, the demon Pazu would already be meeting his ancestors. After everyone regained consciousness, Lloyd immediately pretended that a man named Robert had appeared and defeated the demon Pazu. Meanwhile, Grimm secretly absorbed Pazu's remaining ambition and magical power into his own body. Although the kid always said that one day he would be strong enough to take revenge, with his current condition, that day was still very far away. After returning to the palace, Albert submitted a petition asking the king to add the 7th prince to the line of succession. He believed that although Lloyd was still young, he possessed the qualities of a wise and capable ruler. The king agreed immediately after hearing this, but Lloyd himself was only interested in magic. One of the bear wolves from the previous battle also followed Lloyd back to the palace as a pet. Lloyd named it Ciro because of its fluffy and beautiful white fur. Seeing Lloyd gently pet Ciro, Grimm also puffed up his fur to imitate it and get some attention. No one knew what kind of demon would get jealous of a dog like this. Lloyd began training Ciro to perform basic actions such as shaking hands and standing on its hind legs. However, his real goal was advanced training using magic. When Lloyd tried writing a control formula, Ciro suddenly started jumping around wildly as if short-circuited. Hearing this, Silpha introduced Lloyd to a monster expert, Princess Eliza. The moment she saw her younger brother visiting, Eliza rushed over and hugged Lloyd so tightly that he almost fainted. She explained that the secret to taming monsters lay in love and affection. Only when the master and pet were connected by mutual intent would the monster obey. Imagining Ciro running 3 laps and barking, "Woof woof," Lloyd tried visualizing it, and Ciro immediately did exactly that. Lloyd instantly gained a deeper understanding of how to connect with monsters. On the way back with Silpha, Albert brought the 4th prince Diane to meet Lloyd. Diane had heard rumors that Lloyd could enchant weapons and wanted to verify them. He had been trained in blacksmithing since childhood, which made him even more curious. When Diane saw Lloyd forge a magical sword with his own hands, he immediately believed it and excitedly lifted Lloyd into the air. Diane said that with Lloyd by his side, his dream of forging the strongest magic sword in the world could come true. Lloyd was also extremely excited at the thought of ordinary people firing fireballs with a single sword swing. So he agreed to cooperate right away. However, no matter how many times they tried, they still failed. Lloyd realized that he was lacking red magic powder, a material taken from monster cores. It was the same substance he had once found inside the dull knife. This problem was relatively simple, so Lloyd immediately went with Silpha to the Adventurers Guild to register a quest. Before becoming Lloyd's swordsmanship tutor, Silpha had been an A-rank adventurer. She was famous under the title Silver Sword Princess. She had conquered countless dungeons with power comparable to a demon, but after retiring for many years, she had dropped back down to C rank upon returning. To accept a dungeon quest, a party needed at least 1 B-rank adventurer. Just as they were feeling disappointed, Dao suddenly appeared. She had been scouring dungeons everywhere searching for Robert without success. But thanks to that, she had been promoted to A rank instead. Dao wanted to accompany Silpha to gain a chance to attend the 2nd Prince Albert's tea party, because she was still painfully single. At the quest board, Silpha mentioned that she had once confronted an extremely dangerous organization called the Assassin's Guild. With Dao's help in registering, Lloyd finally obtained the materials from the final treasure chest of the dungeon. After that, Lloyd and Diane successfully created an absurdly powerful magic sword. A single swing alone could trigger a terrifying explosion. It was classic Lloyd, overbuffing yet again. That night, Lloyd sensed an intruder entering the palace. He did not yet know that this person was a member of the Assassin's Guild that Silpha had mentioned. Lloyd immediately flew to intercept the intruder and set up a barrier to block them. But only moments later, he caught a sweet fragrance coming from the girl. Lloyd was instantly paralyzed. Even detoxification magic could not dispel it. The girl said that she had been cursed with poison since birth, which was why people called her general nicknamed Poison Butterfly. After saying that, she broke through Lloyd's barrier and fled. Lloyd did not chase after her. because what he wanted was to find the hideout of the entire assassin group. According to Silpha, all members of the Assassin's Guild were cursed and possessed special abilities. It didn't take long for Lloyd to track down the hideout of Jen and her companions. Even though they knew he was the 7th prince, they still had to make a move, because they couldn't afford to let information leak. The first one was Babylon, nicknamed the Giant Rat, whose curse made his body soft like rubber and able to bend freely. Next was Crow, nicknamed the Night Raven, a man wearing a mask and wielding curse magic. Even after being hit by his curse incantation, Lloyd dispelled it and dodged the bald man's punch. But immediately after that, he was caught in the spider silk of Galilea, nicknamed the Spider-Man, a cursed spider-type assassin whose threads could bind anyone they touched. To break free, the 7th prince was forced to strip off his clothes. But before he could counterattack, he took a slash from Talia, 100 scars. Her cursed ability caused anyone who entered her line of sight to share injuries with her, meaning that attacking her was the same as attacking oneself. Finally, there was General, the one who had infiltrated the royal palace earlier. Jen's ability only activated when she had to remove her clothes and expose the cursed skin to release poison. After fully understanding each assassin's abilities, Lloyd became even more excited. Up until now, it had only been a warm-up, now he was finally getting serious. When the assassins realized that Lloyd was using sword techniques identical to Silpha's, the Silver Sword Princess, all of them felt a chill down their spines. Who could have imagined that this kid had been learning Silpha's swordsmanship since childhood, in just a few moves? Lloyd completely crushed each assassin's ability without mercy. He even unleashed techniques identical to his master's, rendering Crow completely helpless. Despite receiving reflected damage from Talia's curse, Lloyd continued attacking, and strangely enough, the pain from the backlash actually made him feel exhilarated. Galilea rushed forward, trying to lock Lloyd's arms, but the moment he touched him, he was flung straight into the wall. In the end, Lloyd walked up to Jen and told her to release her poison and keep fighting. Fortunately, Galilea stopped her in time, because if Jen truly released her poison, everyone there would be meeting their ancestors. Looking back at the entire battle, Lloyd realized that all of them had been unable to control their curses, which was why they had been shunned by society. After understanding everything, Lloyd decided to help the group control their abilities by placing a circulation enchantment on each of their bodies. Everyone was moved to tears, because from now on, they could live like normal people. Lloyd was given a new set of clothes, since the previous one had been ruined by spider silk. Galilea began telling Lloyd about the reason the Assassin's Guild was formed. The former leader was Jade, nicknamed Shadow Wolf, who was cursed with the ability of instantaneous teleportation. Because he couldn't control it, Jade constantly blinked all over the place. One day, he founded the Assassin's Guild, taking on covert missions that the Adventurers Guild could not handle. Each time they completed a mission, they left behind a coin emblem at the scene, hoping that one day the Adventurers Guild would acknowledge their existence as protectors of peace. While she was in the middle of telling the story, a letter bearing the Assassin's Guild emblem suddenly teleported in. The letter stated that Jade had now become the Lord of the Lodos region and invited the entire group to attend a banquet. Seeing how precisely the letter had been teleported, Lloyd began to suspect Jade and decided to follow the group to Lodos to see what was really going on. When Silpha and Ciro arrived at the Assassin's Guild hideout, they found no one there, only Lloyd's clothes and a letter. When they brought it back to show Albert, everyone believed that Lloyd had been kidnapped and taken to Lodos. The second prince, furious, immediately ordered the army to prepare a rescue mission for his younger brother. Meanwhile, Lloyd used flight magic to carry the entire assassin group to Lodos at an astonishing speed. While Jen went into the forest to look for food, Lloyd heard about her past. Jen had been cursed with poison since birth, which led to her parents' deaths. Jade was the one who saved her, took care of her, and brought her into the Assassin's Guild. To General, Jade was like an older brother. After hearing this, Lloyd became even more eager to meet Jade and see what kind of person he was. After eating their fill, Lloyd fell asleep right on the grass. Meanwhile, the Assassin's Guild entered the castle to check on Jade's situation, while Grimm secretly followed along in case something happened and he needed to report back to Lloyd. Once inside, everyone was shocked to see Jade hosting a grand banquet. He had now become the Lord of Lodos and had completely mastered his teleportation ability. The group was deeply moved to reunite with their leader. But the joy didn't last long. The people at the banquet suddenly transformed into demons. Even Jade himself had his body taken over. Sensing that something was wrong, Grimm tried to save everyone. But before he could do anything, Jade blinked over and sent him flying with a single punch. straight toward where Lloyd was sleeping. Hearing the commotion, Lloyd woke up just in time as the demon's true nature within Jade was revealed. It was Gusame. Nicknamed the Calamity Demon, a being from hell who sought to seize bodies with exceptional teleportation abilities. Gusame declared that Jade's will had been eroded to death, and that his body had now become nothing more than a vessel. He also stated that the members of the Assassin's Guild were ideal hosts, since their cursed bodies allowed demons to adapt more easily. When Gusame grabbed General, he discovered that her body was covered in tattooed, soul-binding characters. Not understanding what they were, he flew into a rage, demanding to know who dared mark his property. Even while being controlled by Gusame's incantation, Jen clenched her teeth and refused to reveal Lloyd. She even bit down hard on her own tongue to cause herself pain, determined not to betray her comrades. At that moment, Lloyd appeared in midair. A devastating spell struck Gusame's body, creating a massive crater filled with molten lava. Knowing that Jen had nearly taken her own life because of him, Lloyd was deeply moved. He healed Jen and told everyone to leave immediately. The demons, thinking Gusame was dead, wailed in despair, but in reality, he survived thanks to Jade's extraordinary teleportation speed. He immediately ordered his subordinates to pursue the Assassin's Guild, because if they lost their trail, finding them again would be extremely difficult. But Lloyd was not the type to stand by and watch demons run rampant. With a single overwhelmingly powerful spell, he blew apart the entire castle, cutting off the demon's advance. Seeing someone dare to block his path, Gusame attacked at once. His strike pierced straight through Lloyd's barrier. Fortunately, Lloyd dodged in time, half a second slower, and he would have met his ancestors. At this moment, Remo trembled as he explained that the demon race was divided into ranks. Pazu had only been an 8th rank demon, while he himself, Remo, was rank 3. However, Gusame was completely different. He was a demon noble, bearing pure blood lineage, with power so overwhelming that even 100 first-rank demons combined could not rival him. But Lloyd feared no one. On the contrary, he felt exhilarated at the chance to test himself against such a powerful opponent. Although Lloyd was incredibly strong in magic, using ordinary spells to kill demons was like splashing water on fish. Only a great deluge could truly bring them down. And yet Gusame was like a monster from the deep sea. With just a simple strike, he pierced through 2 layers of Lloyd's barrier. Next came a barrage of mana spears, like homing missiles, ready to crush everything in their path. Gusame then teleported right in front of Lloyd and unleashed a kick so powerful that Lloyd's barrier visibly warped. Watching the battle between 2 monsters wearing human skins, Roar stood outside, crying until she ran out of tears. Although Lloyd erected a gigantic wall of stone to block the wave of mana spears, Gusame then unleashed his true power, combining mana spears with teleportation, forming a technique known as Shadow Wolf. Its speed made it impossible for Lloyd to predict where it would appear. In the blink of an eye, Lloyd's body was pierced through like a pincushion, but that was only a substitute decoy. The real Lloyd had already teleported behind Gusame and slashed straight at him. Unfortunately, Gusame's teleportation speed was too fast, causing the strike to miss its target. Outside the city, the second prince's group and Silpha also arrived, allowing the Assassin's Guild to escape the demon's pursuit. At first, Silpha even thought the assassins themselves had kidnapped Lloyd, and nearly cut them all down if Elisa hadn't appeared in time. She pointed out that if they had malicious intent, they would have already been eaten by Fenra, and wouldn't be standing there talking. Silpha prepared to rush in and rescue Lloyd, but a Shadow Wolf strike from Gusame collapsed the bridge entirely, sending the demons plunging into the river. The second prince realized that being ambushed would be extremely dangerous, so he immediately ordered a retreat from the city gate. That decision allowed Lloyd to fight with peace of mind, without worrying about exposing his secrets. Silpha ordered Ciro to jump across the collapsed bridge to save Lloyd, but because he was too fat, he couldn't make the jump, fell with a loud splash into the river, floating belly up like a beached whale. The Silver Sword Princess had no choice but to find another route. But just as she was about to leap in, she was ambushed by a demon. Thanks to her agile footwork, she managed to block the attack in time. The demon claimed to be an 8th rank demon, wielding the strongest sword style in the demon realm, the Heavenly Demon One-Blade School. But before the fight even began, Silpha couldn't resist mocking him. "What kind of hat are you wearing? You look like a lump of crap, old man." Outside the city, the second prince used his swordsmanship to summon a meteor shower that rained down on the demons. Despite being exhausted, he still shouted encouragement, urging the soldiers to keep fighting. Meanwhile, The battle between the 8th rank demon and the Silver Sword Princess grew extremely intense. Their speed was so fast that ordinary people couldn't even see them. Silpha unleashed a devastating killing strike, and the demon responded with an equally powerful ultimate technique. Both sides were injured. Seeing that this still wasn't enough, the 8th rank demon unleashed his strongest move, an ultra-fast slash that sliced away Silpha's skirt hem. This sword art was the culmination of a lifetime of harsh training by the possessed swordsman, reflected in the countless scars covering his arms. Feeling pity for that swordsman, Silpha decided to use the sword that Lloyd had reinforced. Hidden within Ciro's fur, she had never dared to fight at full strength before, because no sword could withstand even a single blow from her. So Lloyd had strengthened this blade to be exceptionally durable, without adding any enchantments at all. Drawing the demon-slaying sword, Silpha unleashed the slash, one lake-seizing claw, instantly sending the demon straight to the death counter. Inside the city, the battle between Lloyd and Gusame was still far from over. The Demon Lord's techniques continued to evolve, yet all of them were built upon the foundation of Shadow Wolf, something Lloyd still hadn't figured out how to counter. If Lloyd were even 1 or 2 seconds slower, he would be pierced to death instantly. Tired of dodging, Lloyd switched to offense. He used dual chanting, deploying high-speed spell formulas, creating a gigantic magma golem that punched straight at Gusame. However, Gusame immediately teleported away to dodge. The fist smashed into the lake, creating a thick curtain of mist. This unintentionally prevented Gusame from using Shadow Wolf, because he needed to see his target clearly to teleport accurately. Realizing this weakness, Lloyd charged forward, using Chaotic Dance to split into hundreds of clay clones. Gusame stabbed again and again, finally skewering a fake Lloyd. The real body had already swapped weapons with a clone to deceive him. Lloyd appeared from behind, spewing flames to burn Gusame's body, yet he still lived. Unable to distinguish real from fake, Gusame fought dirty and unleashed a move meant to annihilate everything. As a result, he found a Lloyd protected by a barrier, but that too was only a clay clone. Lloyd had deliberately set up the barrier to lure him into a trap. He had also prepared a self-made magic-draining sword, capable of absorbing and analyzing an opponent's abilities. Through it, Lloyd was able to reach the faint remnant of Jade's consciousness still inside the demon's body. Jade taught him that human dreams were the very thing that made magic limitless. Immediately after that, Lloyd unleashed a punch at a speed even faster than Gusame's teleportation. Gusame tried to flee, but every time he teleported, Lloyd predicted it and intercepted him. In the end, Lloyd struck him with an overwhelmingly powerful spell, sending him plunging straight into the lava pit. Unable to lock onto coordinates, Gusame panicked and was hit over and over again. Enraged, he unleashed his secret forbidden technique, the Dark Singularity Sphere, said to return all things to nothingness. But after barely half a second, it was destroyed by Lloyd in an instant. It turned out that since childhood, the 7th Prince had treated spatial magic like everyday play, so he was no stranger to such spells at all. Because of that, he knew clearly that void-type spells would automatically cancel each other out upon collision. Seeing the child before him treat the strongest magic of the demon race like a toy, Gusame was so furious he nearly spat blood. He immediately teleported forward, grabbing Lloyd by the head, but the moment he made contact, he froze in shock after discovering that the magical power inside the boy's body was as vast as an entire universe. Suddenly, hundreds of void magic spheres appeared around him and swallowed his body whole. Even if Gusame wanted to abandon Jade's body and escape, it was already too late. The 7th Prince's technique quickly crushed Gusame completely. After the body dissipated, Jade's soul appeared, thanked Lloyd, and then slowly faded away. Seeing his brother, Lloyd recalled the day he had just been born. Back then, Jade had been extremely excited, always believing that the 7th Prince was the hope of them all. He believed the boy could erase the curse and lead everyone out of the darkness. After the battle, Lloyd built a grave for Shadow Wolf as a token of gratitude. Because before dying, Jade had tried to simplify the Shadow Wolf technique to help Lloyd counter Gusame. In a sense, the true victor of this battle was Jade, the one who had witnessed the entire truth. As Lloyd stepped forward to pay his respects to Jade, the 2nd Prince, Albert, suddenly appeared. It seemed he already knew everything, including his younger brother's true strength. But instead of scolding him, he tightly embraced Lloyd, because this was still the youngest brother he cherished dearly. At that moment, Dao also came running after hearing Lloyd was in danger, only to find that the battle had just ended. Seeing everyone finally gathered together, they decided to hold a small farewell party. The martial artist girl saw people hugging and crying, so she cried along with them, leaving everyone speechless. And together, everyone enjoyed the happiness after the battle. From that day on, Jen also became one of Lloyd's attendants and began her training at the castle. As for Lloyd himself, he continued striving to explore magic alongside his companions. And so, part 1 of the anime reincarnated as the 7th prince comes to an end. See you all in the next part. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support Oni-chan in making even more exciting videos. Thank you all for watching until the very end. Much love to everyone.